How did we find the two breweries? So Chip and I started filming this in April of 2013. We were just really big craft beer fans and decided we wanted to make a documentary about beer. That was kind of as far as we got. So we started doing interviews with local breweries. Danny was actually one of the very first people we talked to right before he cut the ribbon to open. And we were both really intrigued by that entrepreneur angle and what happens when you have this idea to start a business. Is it going to succeed? Is it going to fail? So right away we were both kind of very intrigued by him, and then we started doing interviews with other breweries all over the country. So we're from Maryland, and we went to 14 states, and we did about 100 interviews, and then you can say who we met the brew gentlemen.
Yeah, so we met the guys from the Brew Gentlemen in Washington, D.C. They were taking something called a Cicerone exam. So a Cicerone is basically the beer equivalent of a wine sommelier, someone who's like an expert in beer, and you have to take this crazy test and do blind tastings and say, I think this is Sierra Nevada Bigfoot, or whatever it is. So we met them at the test, and they told us they were 22 years old and starting a brewery, which was pretty crazy. That was the youngest people we'd ever met. There's actually an article in Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh Gazette. It was Pittsburgh's Barely Legal Brewers, which I thought was pretty funny. So that intrigued us, and then once we drove into the town of Braddock and learned more about the history and just kind of the visuals there, we were like, okay, this is pretty intriguing. We kind of want to learn more about it and follow this through. So, any other questions you guys have? Yes?
There have been some examples of breweries spearheading gentrification of certain neighborhoods. Does that happen in Braddock, or is it kind of where it was?
So I'll echo the mayor of Braddock, who says it's not gentrification because there's no one here. But yeah, some exciting stuff actually has been happening in Braddock. So right now, you can kind of see at the end Matt's like pointing across the street. So that was an apartment complex that's getting built. I think it should be just about done, and that was done with loans from the federal government. And it's going to be a 55-plus community right across from the brewery. So happy hour every day. And then Kevin Sousa, who's a pretty famous Pittsburgh chef, is working to open his very first restaurant. It's going to be in Braddock, which there hasn't been a restaurant in Braddock in like 10 or 20 years. And he's working with the mayor to do that. And then they're using food from Braddock Farms, and they're also doing a culinary training program so people can come and learn how to cook and do stuff like that at the restaurant once it's fully going. So that's pretty cool.
Any other questions? Yes?
How many breweries want to stay local versus wanting to go more national, and is there like a tension between that?
Yeah, so we talked to about 80 different breweries of all different sizes in this, the filming of this project. So we met a lot of people who were at what you would call the regional level. So maybe they're distributing in, let's say like the South or in the Northeast or wherever, and they're fairly content with that level of growth. I think it's going to be unlikely that we're going to see as many huge national brands like Sierra Nevada or like Dogfish or like maybe Sam Adams. I think that space is really competitive, and it might be tough to break into that for some of these regional breweries. And then on the, a totally different side, we've seen a lot of breweries that are literally content just serving their neighborhood. Most people have aspirations of distribution to can it or bottle it because that's what you kind of need to do to make the numbers work. But some people are just happy, serving right at the tap room and just kind of serving their local neighborhoods. So it all kind of depends on what the strategy is and how big they want to grow. So there's all sorts of different people. But in terms of tension, I think it's like a pretty collaborative industry, unlike many other industries where it's in a capitalist society. It's very competitive, very cutthroat. Brewers are a different breed. It's pretty bizarre. If you need spare ingredients, you can call up the brewery in town and borrow it from them. Like, you wouldn't see that in a different industry. So that was pretty inspiring to us as well.